Can anybody tell me what happens when you flip your boat over in the water? I'm pretty sure you bend the valve. But alrighty then. Something else to fix. Well, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about some things I've seen over the past few weeks of scouting and checking some new areas, things like that, that will influence the way I'm going to hunt this year or where I'm going to hunt this year. So if I've been seeing it, I'm assuming everybody else is seeing it. And I've had a few people ask me about it. So let's get into it. So, and pretty much any time my mouth opens about deer hunting, I'm talking about getting away from people, getting away from human pressure, whether that's finding the overlook spot or going where nobody else is going to go, things like that. That becomes really hard in times like now when it's real dry. So right now, people are being able to walk everywhere because the sloughs are dry, the creeks are dry, everything's dry. Come probably by mid-archery, but I'm sure by gun season things will be deep again. If we get a storm, it'll be back to normal. But it normally just the summer rains that'll start here any day now normally bring the levels back up to keep people out. But as for right now, I think a lot of these guys maybe either haven't ever walked it before or haven't seen it when it's wet. So there's going to be a lot of guys scouting places now where I got a feeling they're not going to actually be hunting when season rolls around, or at least by beginning of gun season or mid-archery. But what I've been running into is places I've been around for a lot of years. I'm seeing trail cameras and finding where somebody dropped a candy wrapper or a water bottle cap, or I'm just finding human sign in places I've never seen human sign. So if it did stay dry and people were able to hunt it, I'm not going to go jump in there amongst them and try to hunt. I know the bigger YouTube channels like The Hunting Public and The Untamed and some of the bigger ones, probably Dan Infault and Hunting Beast. I know they've had problems, especially the ones I've talked to have had problems over the past few years with people either figuring out where they're hunting or seeing their vehicle, things like that, and going in there. So I'm sure some of what I'm running into is some of that, but probably very little. But with that said, if it's like the places I'm talking about are pretty extreme, so I'm not gonna go battle it out with the guy that's willing to put that much work in to get in there and hunt it, because he's pretty dedicated. It's probably not a weekend warrior. I mean, and it could be, but I'll some of the places I'm kind of writing off, I'll monitor them, and if I'm not seeing anybody there, then I'll assume they just hung a camera and they're not going to hunt it now that it's wet, things like that. But where I was going with that is if I have to hunt around people or closer to people than I like to hunt, I'm gonna go out on the outskirts now. If guys are like, my normal setup is in something nasty, across something nasty, somewhere where deer don't typically live, basically. But when the hunting pressure, the scouting pressure, the hunting pressure, guys that archery hunt typically, the majority start scouting a couple weekends before season opens, and they pick their spot and all that stuff. So that's when I start to see the deer being pushed into my spot slowly. And then your guys that don't archery hunt, that only gun hunt, then they come out of the woodwork a couple weeks before gun season opens, or we get a cool front or something, and then the deer really pick up in there where I'm at, the bucks. So if people are going to be crowded in there where I'm at, or where the terrain I'm typically hunting, then instead of battling it out with them and you know, just dealing with that, I'm gonna go on the outskirts, because deer aren't, the bucks aren't gonna live there if there's guys in there hunting it all the time and stinking it up, and there's a trail camera every 100 yards, and it's just, the bucks aren't gonna live there. There'll be a few get pushed in there and get shot, and then the rest of them will go somewhere else. So I'm not gonna battle it out with those guys. I'm gonna go somewhere where it's easy to hunt, probably. And actually, we do, I generally not the shooter on these hunts. Normally have one of the boys shooting, but some of the better bucks the boys kill in places. I may do a video on it one day. But Tristan killed a nice 6-point last year during gun season, and I mean, you know, not a trophy, but for a 13-year-old kid, it's an absolute trophy. But there's a guy's tree stand, camera, and everything. It's a ladder stand. It's probably 85, 90 yards from where Tristan was sitting, basically the way he's facing, and then like at a 45-degree angle to the left behind him at 120 yards, there's another ladder stand and a camera. And these guys are mainly weekend or evening hunters. They, you know, if it looks like I've got up and moved around 10 times since I've started this, it's because I have. It's a Sunday and the boys are out here driving their racing four-wheelers and dirt bikes, and they decided they wanted to come up here to the shop door and rev them up. And then I had 2 people come in the shop. So anyway, so basically he's got guys hunting on each side of him, weekends and evenings. Like, you know, I'm assuming they get off work at 3:30 or something, and they run out and hunt the evenings. That's typically what I see. I will see them hunt mornings on a weekend, but mainly just during cold front or something. It's not like they're really hardcore dedicated hunters, I don't think, but they'll shoot some nice bucks. But they've had them stands in them locations for years, and it's a perfect travel corridor. Like there's a big pond, and then there's a open, used to be some sort of field or whatever, I'm sure, but it's a big open area that bucks don't feel comfortable in. So when they're coming through that stretch, they cut diagonal between them tree stands basically. And I've ran cameras there before and just get a ton of bucks on certain dates, you know, rut time traveling. But that'll be, you know, that would be something I would look for, is human pressure. So all the bucks are doing is avoiding the tree stands. So it's not exactly, if the tree stands were in the prime locations back when they were originally set up, but over the years, or, you know, I don't know how long it took, but however long it took, the bucks avoid the tree stands now. So that will be something I'll look for if I have to set up and hunt around people, which I'm still thinking chances are I probably won't. Like, people probably won't bother me once it gets wet. Most of the time, even the guys that think they're going to be hardcore during the summer end up not being too hardcore when it's 40 degrees and they got to go belly button deep. Most of them don't do it. So I probably won't have an issue. But for maybe even you're one of the guys that went in somewhere dry this summer and hung some cameras and think that's where you're going to hunt, or maybe you are, but when the water comes up, you change your mind. What are you going to look for? You know, if you put all your eggs in that basket, or do you have other spots picked out? But I can use other people's access. I can use hunting pressure. I can use tree stands. I can use cameras. I can use any human activity basically to my advantage, because the bucks are going to avoid it. You know, and they may only be avoiding it 50, 60 yards, maybe 100 yards. I've shot a lot of bucks especially I don't do it quite as much as I used to, but I used to go in I'd be the first one there in a heavily pressured management area. Yeah, there was 1 or 2 parking access points or something, and I would park at 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever time it was, crazy early. And before, you know, I may even take a nap in the truck, but before the first other vehicle got there, and they may be 10 vehicles parked at that access or something, but I kind of knew where the stands were, knew where the people would hunt. And a very similar scenario to how Tristan killed the 6-point is I had a few locations like that that were set up to where bucks would come through morning time. It was all morning time, and they would come through going to bed and avoid those permanent stands or the climbers and stuff that people left on trees. And I shot a lot of deer with guys in trees, 80 within 100 yards of me. And a lot of those guys, but this was way before video cameras and stuff, or before I was carrying a video camera. But a lot of the times, those guys would get down and leave at 10 o'clock, and then I would see bucks at 12 or 1 or something. But even the bucks, I've talked about it a little bit before, but I would, if I left early, I just hunted the morning and I left early. If I didn't see a shooter, if I shot one, then I would try to wait and avoid seeing people and being seen with the deer. Is what I would try to do. But if I didn't shoot one, I might run into the guys back up at the trailhead or whatever, sitting around on the tailgate. Hey, did y'all do any good? And, I saw a doe and a yearling, and then one guy may have saw a spike or something. But for the most part, they really never saw anything. And I'm sitting less than 100 yards. I got a guy 100 yards over here, got a guy 100 yards over here, and I've seen 4 or 5 bucks that morning. Some of them up 100 inches. Bucks nobody would let walk, but I was trying to shoot 120 or better or something. But that's just an example of using people as making it pinch points, basically funneling the deer down, making pinch points. Because the deer, I'm sure an old deer will go hide out. I mean, deer go hide out in ponds. I understand that, in thickets and in ponds and stuff. But they're not just gonna lay in a hole with their nose poking up for 24 or for 12 hours waiting on it to get dark. They're not nocturnal creatures, so they're gonna be moving around somewhere, and especially rut when they get, they may be a mile and a half from their bed at daylight, and they're gonna get back to where they're gonna lay down. Or, what I think a lot of times in the rut, what a lot of guys are shooting are bucks that get hung up with it. The doe's gonna be in the next 12 hours or, whatever. I don't know exactly how that works, but she's so close that the big buck's not gonna leave her, or he's breeding her or whatever. And that's the deer, the bigger deer that'll get killed a lot of times. But the deer that are just traveling, not necessarily with a doe, are avoiding the hunting pressure. And that's another reason, like the majority of my better deer, the majority of my boys' better deer are all on the first sit, or at least, if not the first sit of the season. So like I don't really hunt the same place twice. Or if I'm hunting on the ground, it's not, I don't really sit on the same tree twice. If I'm in a tree stand, I don't climb the same tree twice. But, I may only move 60 yards. I may hunt a spot, treat that spot I hunted like the bucks walked by there and smelled it, and now they're going to avoid it. So I'm going to go sit over here 60 yards. So I'm just trying to give you a bunch of things to think about. So that would be using my own pressure to pinch deer down. And I'm sure this isn't something that's going to work all the time. This is just an example of things I think about that do affect deer movement and do work sometimes. I think moving is pretty much always better than hunting the same tree or staying stationary. Where that changes, and I've said it before, and I've got some buddies that are very successful at shooting big bucks year after year after year. But they don't typically shoot any during archery. It's strictly rut, and they set up, in some type of crossing, like a slough crossing, a pinch point, things to where any buck traveling through this section of swamp or through this section of woods is going to cross this little gap right here. And they're set up with a rifle shooting them at 100 yards, so they're not intrusive into the deer's bedding area. They have a good access. The deer never know, even though they're shooting 5 deer from one tree, the deer really never know they were there. They may be even shooting them in water, flowing water or something, and dragging the deer right back up the water, so the smell of blood and death or whatever is not even there. So situations like that, I would absolutely hunt the same tree, but I don't really enjoy that type of hunting. But it's very successful during rut and when the bucks are traveling. But I would lean more towards moving around, treating my pressure. You know, once I've been there, I'm gonna basically assume that any buck that comes through the area for the remainder of hunting season is gonna know I was there. So I'm gonna either keep pushing in, and this is just using my scent. I'm trying to, and this is small area, you know, kind of. I'm trying to think of how to say it, and with it making sense. But like if I find an area, this may be just a cypress swamp. It could be a island. So I may, if I can get a good access, to slip out and hunt the edge of it one day, and then, you know, I'm gonna do the next best, least intrusive thing the next day or the next hunt, and kind of hunt my way around or in. If I just, and in some cases, I think I need to go straight to the thick of it, and you know, I'm gonna get one hunt out of it and blow it up. You know, every deer that comes through there is gonna know I was there. In some cases, I'll do that. But if I'm wanting to hunt the place kind of repeatedly or throughout the season, then I'm kind of gonna stage hunt, I guess you call it, my way in. Or it may be even a place I slip around and try to find where the hot sign's coming and going, things like that. But I'm never just setting up and waiting on a deer to come to me. I mean, in theory I am, but not in the traditional sense of hunting. But I think boats have got a lot more popular over the past few years. Like even you know, a lot of kids and stuff have boats now, to where it didn't used to be that way. And boats are you can buy a boat that's set up for hunting now, that's a lot better than what they used to be. So more people are getting boats for the purpose of hunting than what they used to be. So that lets gives a lazier guy the opportunity to kind of get away from people, maybe get a little bit more remote in some places. So I think whether you're hunting by truck or hunting by boat, to be consistently successful, as more and more people start hunting and more public land becomes more and more popular, I think it'll reach a peak to where a lot of people get fed up with the amount of hunting pressure, and then they go get on leases and stuff. It kind of fluctuates, comes in phases. Like, you know, you won't see anybody for a few years, and then it'll be slammed for 5 years, and then it trickles down, and you just see your normal guys, and then it'll be slammed again. It's just one of those things. But I kind of always try to think outside the box. But I think to be these next several years, probably to be successful over and over, you're really going to have to think outside the box, just because the increase in hunting pressure and the increase of guys doing what they weren't willing to do before. Maybe some of that has to do with YouTube, maybe it doesn't, but and a few of the guys I've talked to recently, you know, they were into duck hunting for years, you know, whatever it was. And a lot of duck hunters have nice boats and get out, you know, especially guys that duck hunt off the rivers or stuff, or the creeks that come off of lakes or flow into lakes. You know, they're going back in the swamp for the wood ducks, and they'll see a big buck, or they're transitioning into deer hunting now, and that may start out with they're out there duck hunting and they just throw a rifle in the boat, you know, things like that, and then they become more serious. So I'm seeing more and more of that, and that will eliminate a lot of the water access spots just by the duck hunters or the guy that's out there duck hunting. They go shoot ducks in the morning and they're taking off in the swamp trying to find a deer, things like that. So that will eliminate some of the boat spots, and just the general increase of pressure overall, I think, is going to make the bucks use smaller areas. Unfortunately, I think we'll see a drop in the average age we'll see less mature bucks probably over the next few years, but I could be wrong. But it seems like we're on that cycle now, to where the places that the bucks were getting old are just going to get absolutely hammered with people. And but it's public land, it's all fun, and it'll cycle back around. It is what it is. But anyway, that's what I had in mind today, and hope it's gave you something to think about. I got to put a boat motor together, so we'll see you on the next one. Good luck scouting.